I definitely think they'll still continue to be aggressive. I really do. I think, they could, look to trade guys like Tyler Anderson, Taylor Ward, maybe even Luis Rengifo.
Here we go. Sam Blum back on FT because the Angels are the movers and shakers right now of the offseason. Best coverage of the Angels. Check it out. He writes for The Athletic. Sam, great to have you back on. Thanks for the quick hop back on the show. How you doing? And what do you think of Kikuchi 3-year $63 million to the Angels?
Well, thank you so much for having me. Hopefully I don't have a cough, storm.
Yeah, remember the cough.
I forgot.
All good.
All right, you're on the hot seat. Let's do it.
Yeah. In terms of the deal, I mean, I don't dislike it. I think it's interesting because it could potentially maybe take them out of the running for some of the big name pitchers on the market currently. I think every Angels fan is looking at Max Fried as the name that they want just because he's a former Brave and they seem to just continuously acquire former Braves players. So yeah, I mean, I think it's fine. I think it makes them marginally better. He had a good end to the season. I mean, his overall career stats are nothing insanely good, but yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense to me. It's they needed another starting pitcher. I feel like just for Perry, like they need to be good this year, right? That's his mandate. So, unless they maybe improve 20 wins, I mean, I think that's kind of what the bar is in order to maybe keep ownership happy with where the trajectory of the team is. For Minasian, and he understands that, so he's making a lot of deals to kind of restructure the overall makeup of the roster, the culture of the roster. They look at Kikuchi, and even though he's going to be, I think, 35 next year in the middle of the season, this is someone that will, be a front end starter for them and, help them get some more wins. They are changing everything up in the hopes of really shaking up a 63 win roster. So will it work? I think with the Angels, I wouldn't be surprised if it absolutely does not work. But it's what it is, and I think probably marginally better today than they were yesterday.
Maybe that's why he wanted him for 3 years, 63, but maybe that's just dumb by me. Either way, I think they're winning the offseason right now. I got to be honest with you. They are the best. They've been picking up free agents. I've said it just a little bit ago, and Kratzy might not agree. They could be the Kansas City Royals team of the West that just all of a sudden sparks up and gets going. Do you see them making any other moves? And if so, do you see them going quickly again with it, or are they going to take their time now?
I definitely think they'll make more moves. The thing I'll be curious about is the trade market in particular. I think that their top prospects are on the table to some extent. Now, I think that would require them getting a Crochet, a Vladdy's Jr., something like that, if they were going to trade a Christian Moore type player. But I think that's on the table to some extent. So I agree with you that there is a pathway for them to maybe they're trying to, build I think that Royals model. Now the Royals have, they got an insane season out of Salvador Perez, and they also have a generational superstar at shortstop. Neither of those things I think the Angels have right now. So, there are other factors that are kind of involved in it. I also think the Royals have a really well-rounded, operation to, that's something that the Angels are at least attempting to build right now more so than they have in the past. So that's why I would have liked to see them maybe be more focused on rebuilding this year or trying to, put their focus in acquiring young controllable prospects to the extent that they could. But, for now, I mean, yeah, I definitely think they'll still continue to be aggressive. I really do. I think, they could, look to trade guys like Tyler Anderson, Taylor Ward, maybe even Luis Rengifo, to some extent, although I'd be more surprised by Rengifo being dealt. But, I think anything with the Angels is on the table. We've seen it year after year. They continuously are, making noise with what they do, whether that be, putting 7 players on waivers or, calling up their top prospect after 10 games in the minor leagues. They're always doing something to get your attention. They're just never winning baseball games. So until they do that, some of these things always just feel cosmetic to me.
Yeah, they've got a little Mets in them. Not this current Mets group, but, the Wilpon Mets were they'd always still be in the news. I mean, and they weren't winning, but they were in the news, right? We talk about them a lot on FT. So I got one follow-up for you on Kikuchi. Why do you think he's the one? Is it just, hey, he identified, this guy among a few other pitchers that they like, talking about Perry and the rest of the Angels crew behind the scenes? Do you think there's something about him, a quality that plays into what the Angels are really looking for? Of course, the Astros valued him very highly, and it worked out really wonderfully for them, right? You look back and you're like, damn, the Blue Jays were messing him up in the first half of the season, or they didn't have the right game plan. The Astros did. And to me, that's the second part of the question is, do the Angels have the staff behind the scenes to make sure he stays on that track? Because even something small like oh, the Astros told me to work my fastball more in the zone. Obviously, there was the curveball slider pitch usage change that he made. But even the heater up in the zone, I was looking back at quotes, and it's like, well, dude, I'm sure they're not the first people to tell you that. And for some reason, the Astros were able to get to him. Can the Angels do the same?
Yeah, I think it's I think you kind of hit on the nail on the head with like the pitch usages. I mean, that clearly worked for him in Houston. So they probably feel like something's been unlocked to some extent, and that it will translate to with this 2025 team. And yeah, I mean, like, do they have the infrastructure pitching wise? I mean, they've really changed up what their pitching. Just the personnel, and whether that be the pitching coaches, their player development, their game plan. I mean, they just hired Sal Fasano as a pitching coach this offseason. It was obviously a long-time catcher. So I mean, they're making some changes there, and I think that if they feel like they unlocked something with his pitch usage that has worked for him, then that it's going to be able to translate at this level with the Angels. I'm sure that's what they're hoping for, and I'm sure that's what they'll continue to do with him next season. Now it's a small sample size of being really effective. Like the last 10 starts with Houston, like you said, I mean they valued him really high. I think everybody was kind of criticizing that trade when it happened as an overpay, but he ended up pitching really well. And the Astros kind of flamed out in the postseason, but it was at the end of the day not an awful deal. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree that it's there. There's I think that's kind of what they've pinpointed. We haven't talked with the front office yet about this, so I'm sure we'll do that when this is actually official. But it's I think that's probably the Angels have liked. If you look at some of the guys they've signed this year, like Kyle Hendricks had a really good end to the season. Jorge Soler had a pretty good end to the season. Like people that have just had a strong trajectory towards the end, towards the most recent time on the field. I think they like that. I think they feel like they can build on some of that. And they also kind of have to just like take a chance on certain players and hope it works out. I mean, that's kind of where they are with their budget. I think to some extent is, you're probably not going to sign a Corbin Burns. So if you can find someone in the aggregate like a Kikuchi who's pitched really well recently, and you hope can kind of bring that back and pitch 175, 200 innings for you next year. I mean, that's I think what they're hoping to do. So that's why he's the guy and not a top name.
FT fam, the holidays are creeping up faster than your aunt's fruitcake recipe, and we've got something way better to share with you. If you want to look sharp for all those festive gatherings, check out the latest masterpiece from Manscaped, the Chairman Pro Electric Foil Shaver. It's like Rudolph for your face, guiding you to a smooth, irritation-free shave. Head over to manscaped.com and join the over 11 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped by using code FAL20 for 20% off plus free shipping.
I wrote up a wish list of what I'm looking for in a modern shaver, and Manscaped nailed it. 2 interchangeable skin-safe blade heads for either the super smooth feel or the clean, manly stubble look. A precision lock for a more precise shave when you want it. Waterproof? Check. 75 minutes of runtime on a single charge? Yup. A travel lock so it doesn't turn on by accident, and an LED spotlight to help you see every detail.
Get the Chairman Pro today and experience a shave that is as smooth as you deserve. Get 20% off plus free shipping with the code FAL20 at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping with the code FAL20 at manscaped.com.
Were you surprised that they let go of Patrick Sandoval? We had the non-tender deadline the other day, and I know he's coming back at some point, apparently maybe in the second half of this year, and so it would have been about 13, 14 mil over 2 years if they kept him for this run, and then hopefully a 26 healthy season coming off the Tommy John.
I was a little surprised but not shocked. I really think that 2025 is a very important year for this front office. So not that they're making decisions based on just the short term, but to some extent, I think that, that $6 million that they would have had to spend on a pitcher that really wasn't going to play this year, even if he were to come back in August, like you're talking about, 4 inning starts at max and, probably, not necessarily, it would be really for 26. And, even when he was been healthy recently, Patrick Sandoval's not been like that effective. So, I mean, I think that's the calculation. I mean, he needs to figure out he doesn't have a good fastball. Like, he's really good secondary pitches. Just the fastball is it needs to be a little better for that to really work. He was good in 2022, but, it's just struggled since then quite a bit. So, the question for him, if the Angels was, what's the value that you kind of put on him in 26? And I guess they kind of determined that it probably wasn't, $13-14 million, because that's basically what you'd have been paying for if you, were to tender him a contract this year. It's in a lot of ways. I mean, they're changing up the whole thing. I mean, like they let Griffin Canning go. Like, They're making, like, Matt Dice is gone. Like, there's a lot of guys that were kind of part of the fabric of the organization for a while that I think they're moving past them. Not to say that they were the reason this team was losing, but I think that Perry just feels like he wants to get his players in there, and he wants to get guys that just mix things up. I mean, it hasn't worked, and so you need to make big changes. So I was a little surprised because I think that at the end of the day, Sandoval has it in him to be a really good major league starter. I mean, we've seen it. We saw it at the World Baseball Classic. We saw it in for the Angels. He's done it at the highest level, but it's not it's not shocking that they would make this move now, just given the overall circumstances of where they're at.
And by the way, worth a mention, we're going to go over non-tenders later, but Canning got non-tendered by the Braves, so it essentially was just a sale, right? They sold
money
to the Angels.
Yeah,
which some people were speculating. I was wondering maybe if they were trying to work on a deal, I don't know, with him behind the scenes, and they just couldn't figure it out. But otherwise, yeah, it was just a money dump, which that's fine. If Soler works out, great for the Angels. They essentially gave up nothing. So my last question for you is, what would be the one thing that they need to nail after this, right? So they've done a lot of housekeeping already. Is it an infielder? Is it another starter to the rotation? What do you think's like the one clear-cut need where if we go through the rest of the offseason and they don't do something like this, you're going to be like, it's hard for me to see that everything works out and they're the 2025 Royals or the 2024 Royals in 25?
They have so many needs. I mean, overall, the funny things, you can look at the Angels roster and you can pinpoint 9 players that fill out a pretty decent lineup, and even like 5 starters that fill out a pretty decent rotation. But to me, I think that they need to figure out third base. That's just for the last 5 years that has been just kind of a black hole for them because of Rendon's injuries, and to me, like, whether is that putting Luis Rengifo there saying, hey, you're our third baseman? They need to have a third baseman going out of spring, and I don't think that person should be Rendon. It's just he hasn't performed enough and he hasn't been healthy enough. So what does that mean? Does that mean you sign somebody else? Does that mean you release Rendon from his contract and just eat the $76 million that he's going to be owed over the next 2 years? I don't know, but I think they need to come into third base and say, this is our guy at third. Last year they were trying with like Sano and Rendon, and it was a bunch of different things, but I like the idea of having Luis Rengifo there if you're not going to make a big signing, and you can fill out the rest later. But they've had like 30 different guys play third base over the last 5 years. It has been just horrible for them, and they need to figure that out. I don't think Bregman's the answer personally, because I think he could, not to say he's going to turn out to be Rendon, but his production has dropped a little bit in the last few years, and he's also like I think 31 right now, so. You'd be entering a stretch where he might be declining more, and you're paying him the most he's ever made in his career by a lot. So I think that I like Luis Rengifo there. I think if they're going to plant a third baseman there, it should be him, and and see where that takes them. But they need to figure that position out and kind of have it solidified.
So what you're saying is you don't like 30-year-old ball players?
As someone that just turned 31, I can't criticize anybody at that age.
Hey now. No, I'm kidding. My last question, we'll finish here. We'll talk about Mike Trout a little bit. Have you heard anything about him, how he's doing? And do you see him playing a full year this year? Or do you see something like, hey, man, we're going to give him a day off a week kind of deal? Have you heard anything about the MVP?
I think their plan is to kind of have him, do everything to some extent. I think they'll have him play some corner. I think he'll obviously DH a decent amount more than maybe he has. I don't, the concern with him DHing, I think for the front office is that he'll just like, he's kind of, if you ever met Mike, like he's kind of bouncy, right? He can't just sit around in the dugout very much. So their concern is that he'll just like do too much in the cage, maybe, that it'll impact his swing. It'll impact his health potentially too if he's DHing. So I think they'll have him play some corner. And I think they'll have him play a little center, and definitely DH some. But that's when you sign Soler. I mean, you can't have him DH full time. That took that off the table. But they don't really have someone that's like a clear-cut center fielder either right now. So I'm sure that he'll play out there, and I'm sure he'll play some corner. But it's not going to be I don't think there's going to be a set position necessarily for him entering spring like they're always like he kind of had, like he's been the center fielder. I don't think that will be the case next year. I mean, there's still probably some to be determined, but that's not what I've kind of been led to believe. So it'll be a bit of a mix. And as far as I've heard, he's back kind of healthy right now, and having a fairly normal offseason to, for what he normally does.
I hope so. I was excited about that April. And then obviously, got bit again. So Sam, awesome to have you back on. And I love the activity. I love it. It's better than us talking to you in February being like, oh, they didn't do anything. So I give them credit for that. They're trying.
Exactly. we'll see what happens. It's fun. I appreciate you having me on this.
Thanks, Sam.
Thank you, Sam. Appreciate you, man.
Hey, everybody. Be sure to like and subscribe for more content.
We're back here every weekday, all year long, so do not miss an episode.
The videos are coming in all day. Here's another video you might enjoy.
Baseball the way it should be covered.